Hi, welcome back. So in one of my previous videos, I looked at place value and how we can use a place value chart to work with numbers, to understand them, to do addition and subtraction. And we're going to look now at how to use them to multiply and divide by powers of 10. So that's 10, 100, 1,000, things like that. So let's get started. So before we get started on what we do these days for the children, let's talk about what we did when I was at school and quite possibly when you guys were at school as well. So we used to get told a couple of things. Firstly, we would get told that to times something by 10 or 100 or 1,000, you would add zeros. So if I had the number, say 23, and I wanted to times it by 10, I would add a zero. If I wanted to then times 230 by 100, I'd add 2 zeros, etc. In some respects that works, and so lots of people get really frustrated with schools when these days we say don't do that, but there are good reasons not to do that. For example, if I was using a decimal number, something like 2.3, and trying to times that by 10, adding a zero does absolutely nothing. So it's really important that children understand that we're not just sticking zeros on the end, we're actually doing something with the digits, which is what we'll come on to in a minute. The other thing that we often got told when I was at school was to move the decimal place, so the decimal point, So I would take the decimal point. So if I wanted to times 2.3 by 10 here, I could move it to there, and that would give me 23. And that is true, it does do that, but again, the problem is the children aren't really then understanding what they're doing, which means when they come to do some sort of column addition or column subtraction, they might get confused about where to line up the numbers. They might end up doing something like 23 and then writing the number 1.4 underneath like that, and not understanding that it's really important that the decimal point always stays exactly the same. The thing that I'm about to show you with timesing by 10 and 100 and 1,000 and dividing, I've often done where I've had children standing up at the front of the class to represent all those different columns, and the person who's the decimal point, I've literally taped their feet to the floor with masking tape so that they can't move, so that the children understand that it's the digits that move, not the columns. So let's talk about the columns now. So these are the columns that I'm referring to. If this is unfamiliar to you, have a look at my place value video. And it tells you all about how you can use it. It's got loads of different purposes. But let's talk about timesing and dividing by powers of 10. So I might have something like the number 6.3. So I've got my ones here, 6 ones, 3 tenths, and there would be a decimal point between there. So 6.3. Just like we were talking about a minute ago, if I wanted to multiply by 10, I'm going to move those digits along. I'm going to move them one place, one each. And now my number is 6 tens and 3 ones, so 63. Nice and simple. So as you can see, I haven't moved the decimal point, I've just moved the digits. If I wanted to multiply it by 10 again, I'd keep going, another one place. Now I've got 6 hundreds, 3 tens, and I've got nothing in the ones. Now it's really important at this point that children put in a zero. It goes up to the decimal point. The reason for that, probably quite obviously, is that if you just looked at that number, it looks like it says 63, whereas actually it's not. It's 6 hundreds, 3 tens, and no ones, so 630. So they need to make sure they have that zero so that it completely makes sense as a correct number. And then if I wanted to do some division, I'd go back the other way. So let's say I wanted to divide by 1,000. I'm going to move the other way, and I'd move them 3 places. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I can see that I've got 6 tenths, 3 hundredths, no thousandths. The zero doesn't matter at this point, you could take it away or leave it there. I would though put a zero into the ones column just to make sure that children understood that that is a decimal number there. So there's my decimal point. That's probably relatively familiar. The key things, if you're doing this with your children, is to make sure, like I've been banging on about, that they do not move the decimal point and they don't just talk about adding zeros, because it doesn't work when you change the context. It's not a good way of doing it for all problems. So it's really important that they use a place value chart like this and they move digits around. Something we've used at school lately, which is new to me, but I love it and I can't take any credit for it, is this. So this is just a moving version of what I've just showed you. So it's made out of laminated paper. You can see that it's got these are the place value columns with the decimal point in the middle. Very simply, this piece of laminate here, it's literally just laminated sheet, threads in, it goes through the back and it comes out there. So I can now write on it here, so it's just here. So I could write a number like 24.1, and if I wanted to multiply that by 10, I'd move one place to the left. So I've got 241. If I wanted to now divide by 100, I'd go 2 places to the right. 1, 2, 2.41. The children love it, they love something that moves, and I love it too because it really is simple, and it avoids some common errors. A really common error is something like this. So if this was 5.01, they might decide that they wanted to multiply that by 10, and so they'd move the digits across. But quite often children then get muddled about this, this 0, and they'll either scooch that right across so that it's next to it, which is obviously forming a completely different number, or if they're going the other way, they might sort of just fill that gap the other way. It really changes it. So zeros is something to watch out for. Children sometimes forget how important they are. They really do make a massive difference to a number, even though it represents nothing. So if you're doing this with your children and they're making errors, check whether they've used the zeros correctly and whether they've kept them in there. That is why these are such a really lovely resource, because if I had a 0 in here, so if that was 20.41, then I can't possibly make a mistake with the 0, because when I move the digits around, the 0 is definitely going to stay in place. So that's really, really useful. Like I said, I unfortunately can't take credit for these, but I think they're amazing. So thank you very much to whichever teacher came up with this. Finally then, the thing that really gets children muddled is knowing which direction they should be moving the digits. So knowing whether they should be going to the left or to the right, and how many places. So regarding how many places, we can either do it one step at a time. So I could say something like, if I want to go by 1,000, I can do 10 first, then 100, then 1,000. Or some children just learn that if it's the number 10, that's got 1 0 in it, so they move it one place. 100 has 2, so they move it 2 places, or 1,000 has 3 zeros, and back the other way. So there's a few ways that people sort of learn that, but it's just one of the things they sort of just have to get used to. And in terms of the direction to go, very simply, I tell children to use their common sense. So, if you're multiplying a number, they should know that multiplying is getting more lots of it. So it's going to get bigger. And if you're dividing it, you're splitting it up. And so it's going to get smaller. So I tell them to just step back from the number, look at what the number actually is that they're dealing with, and then it becomes very obvious. So if I had even quite a complex number like this, like 2.041, and I was trying to divide it by 100, I know that even though I might not know what the answer is going to be, I know that I'm going to make a smaller number. So I'm going to be going in this direction. That will create a smaller number. And of course, the other way, if I was going to times something by 1,000, I know that I'm going to get a larger number. And so I have to think, well, how's my number going to be bigger? Oh, it's going to mean more digits on this side of the decimal point. And so I would do something like that. So it's really common sense when it comes to working out which direction to move the digits. But children can get a little bit overwhelmed with sort of all the bits and pieces that are going on, that sometimes they just forget to think really. So it's about getting them to step back and think, oh yeah, obviously I'm going in this direction or that direction. So there we are. There's been quite a lot of things there. It's very simple though. It's make sure children are moving the digits, not the decimal point, and make sure that children are not just adding zeros on the end willy-nilly, because that doesn't actually help you in most situations. There we are. So hopefully that made some sense. As always, get in touch if I can help you anymore. But the key things you need to remember are that children should never move the decimal point, always move the digits around it. The columns in the decimal point always stay exactly where they are. And also, we don't just put on or take away zeros to times and divide by powers of 10, because it doesn't usually work, it doesn't always work, and quite often it just confuses the children in the long run. As always, please let me know if there's anything in particular you want me to talk about. I'm happy to try that. Please subscribe and please share. Thank you.